Hi there, Mr. Holcomb here with another lesson in pre-algebra. This is Unit 3, Lesson 2, and this is the third session of Lesson 2, dividing negative rational numbers. The learning targets are the same, so I'll skip that and move right on into the first example. It says the Nile River in Northeast Africa is the longest river in the world, about 4,160 miles long. It passes through 5 different countries. Have you ever seen or built a dam? If so, describe your experience. Yeah, there's a dam right down in Lexington, isn't there? Anyhow, let's move on. Make sense of the problem. After a flood, a creek's water level changes by negative 2 and 4/5 feet in 3.5 hours. Okay, so think about this. For some reason, the water or the area flooded with water. And it says after the flood, the level changes by negative 2 and 4/5 feet in 3.5 hours. Okay, so what that means is the water's receding or going back down to the level it's supposed to be normally. So the two values they gave us is the amount it's dropping and how long it took to drop. So that is going to be, we're looking for a unit rate, if you will, water level each hour. So the first thing I'm going to do, there's two ways to do this. We can make this a decimal or we can work with fractions. I'm going to do it with a fraction this time, and I'm going to make it improper. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 4 is 14. So that's negative 14/5. And we're going to divide it by 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7 halves. Okay, 3 and 1/2 is 7 halves. So we have negative 14/5 divided by 7 halves. Well, in order to divide a fraction by a fraction, you leave the first fraction alone. Okay, leave it as is. Change to multiplication, which is the inverse of division, and you take the inverse of the second fraction, which is just flipping it. Okay, so when I do that, something happens. I have a 7 in the denominator and I have a 14 in the numerator. 7 will go into 7 one time, and 7 will go into 14 two times, so I can reduce. So a negative times a positive is negative. 2 times 2 is 4, and 5 times 1 is 5. So this is 4/5 feet per hour. It's decreasing. Okay. I could also have done it as a decimal. Let me see if they give us that opportunity. So it says you can picture to make sense of this problem as well. So water level, time in hours. So after 3 and 1/2 hours, it dropped 2 and 4/5. And we got the answer to be negative 4/5. So this would be a negative 4/5. This would be a negative 4/5. This would be a negative 4/5. And then half would be negative 2/5. So if you added 4/5 and 4/5 and 4/5 and 2/5, you'd get 2 and 4/5. Okay, just splitting it up evenly. So here's how they showed negative 2 and 4/5 divided by 3.5, made it improper, and then multiply by the reciprocal like I showed you, and you get negative 4/5. Okay, another way we could do it is you can divide the decimals. 2 and 4/5 is negative 2.8 because it's negative 2 and 8/10. 2 and 8/10, negative 2 and 8/10. 3.5 is 3 and 5/10 because we need the same denominator. So that's 3.5, and this is 2.8. Okay. Or actually, we want to make it a fraction. So 5/10 is 1/2 or 0.5. Or 3 and 5/10, 2 and 8/10. If you put it over 10, you can just write the decimal. So then we're going to divide negative 2.8 by 3.5. So if I did that long division, then I'd do 3.5 and I'd see how many times it goes into 2.8. And since there's a decimal, you have to move the decimal place one place to the right. So now we're doing 35 goes into 28. And obviously it doesn't, so we put a 0 here. And then 35 goes into 280. Well, 35 and 35 is 70. And 70 is 140. There's 4. So that's 140. So I need 2 of those, so it's going to be 8. 8 times 5 is 40, carry the 4. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 4 is 28. Subtract, and I have no remainder. So a negative divided by a positive is then a negative 0.8 or 8/10. So it's negative 8/10, which reduces to negative 4/5. And if you go back, that's what I had. Okay, so either way you do it, fraction or decimal, it's up to you. You get the same answer. So now let's apply it. What is 16.8 divided by negative 3.5? So I'm going to move the decimal one place to the right on both of them. And I'm going to ignore the sign for now. And I'm just going to take 35. And how many times does it go into 168? So 35 and 35 is 70. And 70 more, which is 2 more 35s, is 140. And any more than that, I'd be going over. So it's going to be 4. 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 2 is 14. Subtract, and I get 28. Bring down a 0. And 35 and 35 is 70. And 70 is 140. And double that, and we're at 280. So that's going to be 0.8. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 3 is 24. Plus 4 is 28. Subtract and have no remainder. So 16.8 divided by a negative 3.5 is negative 4.8. Okay. Apply it. So I'm going to do the multiplication of the reciprocal on this one. Negative 3/8 times negative 2 over 1. See what I did? Division became multiplication. Half became 2 over 1. A negative times a negative is positive. 3 times 2. Actually, I can reduce here. 2 will go into 2 once. 2 will go into 8 4 times. So then I simplify, and I get negative 3 times a negative 1 is positive 3. And 4 times 1 is 4. So the answer is D. Closing exit ticket. A helicopter's altitude changes by negative, so it's going down, decreasing, or I should say descending, negative 28 1/8 feet, and it does that in 3 3/4 seconds. What is the average change in the helicopter's altitude each second? Show your work. So I'm going to do this with a decimal, or do I do it with a fraction? I'd prefer fractions here. But if I do a fraction, I got to multiply 28 times 8. Okay. So 8 times 8 is 64. Carry the 6. 8 times 2 is 16. Plus 6 is 22. And plus 1 all over 8. That's how we do this. And it's 225 over 8. And it's negative. Okay. And we're going to divide by 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 3 is 15 over 4. Okay, then we're going to take this negative 225 over 8, change the division to multiplication, and take the reciprocal of 15/4, and it's 4/15. Cancel if possible. 4 will go into 4 one time, 4 will go into 8 two times. And 15 times 15 is 225, so this is going to reduce to 15, and this is going to reduce to 1. So if you do that and you know your multiplication tables really well, this is actually quite simple. Now I have a negative times a positive is negative. 15 times 1 is 15, and 2 times 1 is 2. So that is negative 7 1/2 feet per second. Okay. Okay, that brings us to the end of session 3. Hi there, Mr. Holcomb here with another lesson in pre-algebra. This is Unit 3, Lesson 12, Session 4, rounding out the lesson. Okay, so multiplying and dividing with negative numbers still, learning targets still the same. Let's move on. Start. What is the value of m? So we're dividing. So what am I going to do? I'm going to pick my pen first. Okay, so I'm going to leave the first as a negative 1/2. I'm going to change this division symbol to multiplication, and I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of negative 3/2, which is negative 2/3, and that's going to equal m. A negative times a negative is positive. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 3. M equals, I'm sorry, 2 times 3 is not 3. It's been a long day. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Reduce. 2 goes into 2 once. 2 goes into 6 3 times. M is a positive 1/3. Example. Consider this. You can multiply in any order. If it's all multiplication, order doesn't matter. That is called the commutative property of multiplication, and they didn't put that here, so I will. That is the commutative property of multiplication. Okay. That's why order does not matter. So look at how you could show your work using multiplication. So what did they do here? They have negative 3/8, negative 2/3, negative 5/2. They repeated it right here, and they said it equals negative 3/8 times a negative 2/3 times a negative 5/2, and they put parentheses around the first two terms. Okay, so they're just working left to right, and they're getting 6. 3 times 2 is 6. 8 times 3 is 24. Negative times a negative is positive, and then they bring down this negative 5/2. Now a positive, oh, they reduced. So they saw this and said, oh, well, 6 will go into 6 once, and 6 will go into 24 4 times. So 6/24 reduces to 1/4. Bring down the negative 5/2. Then we can multiply, and 1 times a negative 5 is negative 5, and 4 times 2 is 8. So we end up with negative 5/8. Okay. Number 1, apply it. Noor, Layla, and Diego play a trivia game. Noor's score is negative 2. Layla's score is 3/4 of Noor's score. Diego's score is 2/3 of Layla's score. What is Diego's score? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, there's a lot going on here. Noor's score is negative 2. Layla's score is 3/4 of Noor's score. Okay, so negative 3/4 of this means you multiply. So I'm going to take negative 2 and I'm going to make it over 1. And I'm going to multiply by 3/4. So I'm going to find Layla's score. So this is Layla. Okay. And negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, and 1 times 4 is 4, and that reduces to negative 3/2. Okay, so that's Layla's score. But then it says Diego's score is 2/3 of Layla's score, and this is Layla's score here. So I'm going to take Layla's score, which was negative 3/2, and this is going to be Diego. Okay, take Layla's score and take 2/3 of it. Okay, and a negative times a positive is negative. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6 again, and anything divided by itself is 1, so the answer is negative 1. So Diego's score is negative 1. Okay, let's move on. Apply it. Yolanda measures the depth of water in a reservoir in 1 week. The depth changed from 2,366.74 feet, and it went to 2,354. So it decreased. What ratio or rational number represents the average change in depth each day? So the first thing I want to do is find out how much it changed total. So I'm going to take 2,366.74 and subtract 2,354.63. 4 minus 3 is 1, 7 minus 6 is 1, 6 minus 4 is 2, 6 minus 5 is 1, 3 minus 3 is 0, 2 minus 2 is 0. We end up with a difference of 12.11 feet in 1 week. To find the average change in depth each day, we now need to take that 12.11 and divide it by the number of days in a week, which is 7. So if I write this as long division, okay, 7 will go into 12 one time, and I subtract, and I am left with a 5. Bring down a 1, put a decimal. 7 times 7 is 49. Subtract and get 2. Bring down the 1. 7 goes into 21 3 times. Okay, so the solution is 1.73 feet per day. Okay, and it's decreasing, so I would say that it is a negative 1.73 feet per day. All right, so that's what that means. I answered this question as well. The depth change is negative because the water was decreasing in elevation. Okay, next problem, apply it. What is 4.8 times negative 2.5 divided by 0.1 negative? So I'm going to write this word over here, order of operations. What do we have here? We have multiplication and division. We have multiplication and division. We don't have any exponents. We don't have any grouping. We don't have any addition. We don't have any subtraction. When we only have multiplication and division, we work left to right. Order does matter here. Please do not divide first. So the first thing I'm going to do is take 4.8 times 2.5. 5 times 8 is 40. 5 times 4 is 20, plus that carried 4 is 24. Okay, bring down a 0. 8 times 2 is 16, carry the 1. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. 0 plus 0 is 0. 6 plus 4 is 10. Carry the 1. 9, 10, 11, 12. 2 decimal places. 4.8 times a negative. Positive times a negative is going to be negative. So now I have negative 12 for my product, these two. So I've only done this so far. Now I have negative 12. And I divide by a negative 0.1. Okay? So I'm going to write this as a fraction, negative 12 over 1. I'm going to switch the division to multiplication. Negative 0.1 is negative 1/10. So I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal, which is negative 10 over 1. Okay, so be really careful with that, this number here. Okay, negative times a negative is going to be positive. So if you look at the original, we have 2 negative numbers. Whenever it's even, your solution is going to be positive. 12 times 10 is 120. The answer is C. Maria chose D as the correct answer. How might she have gotten that answer? Well, hard to say. The only thing I could suggest maybe, let me erase all this. if she divided first, then we'd have 4.8 times, and I'm going to take negative 0.1. Actually, I'm not going to write the negative. I'm just going to write 0.1, and I'm going to divide 2.5 by it. So move the decimal over, move the decimal over. So that's 25 divided by 1, which is 25. And 4.8 times 25, if I did that, 25 times 4.8 is 40, 16, and 4 is 20, 0, 5 times 4 is 20, 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10, and I get 1,200, which is D. So that is what Maria did. She divided first and then multiplied. Okay. Actually, there's one decimal place here, so that's still only 120. How might she have gotten the answer of 1,200? Well, instead of, I'm not really sure. I really don't know how she got another decimal place. 0.1, maybe she thought that was 1/100th and put another 0 there. That's the only thing I could think of. Okay. So next one, apply it. It's a division problem. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to make this a fraction. Negative 79 and 2/10 divided by negative 16 and 5/10. And I'm going to make these improper. 79 times 10 is 790, plus 2 is 792 over 10, and it's negative. I'm going to divide by 10 times 16, which is 160, plus 5, which is 165, divided by 10. Okay, and it's negative. So I'm then going to take negative 792 divided by 10, change the division to multiplication, and take the reciprocal. So now it's negative 10 over 165. Okay, the 10s are going to cancel, and I get 792 divided by 165. So if I do that long division, (165) and 165 is 330. That's 2. Double that, that's 660. That's 4. 660 plus 160 is over 800, so I can only do 4. So I can't do 5. So it's going to be 4. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry the 2. 6 times 4 is 24. Plus 2 is 26. 4 times 1 is 4. Plus 2 is 6. Subtract. And I'm going to get 2 minus 0, which is 2. 9 minus 6, which is 3. 7 minus 6, which is 1. And 165 is more than 132, so it won't go. So I add a 0. So how many times will 165 go into 1,320? I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm going to do this in a different color. I might have to erase. I know it's not 10 because that's 1,600. I'm off by 3, so I'm going to subtract 2 from that and try 8. 5 times 8 is 40. Carry the 4. 6 times 8 is 48. Plus 4 is 52. And a 5. 8 times 1 is 8. Plus 5 is 13. And that was a good choice because that was the correct answer. The answer is 4.8. And by the way, a negative divided by a negative is positive. Okay. Without doing any calculations, is a negative base to an even power positive or negative? Okay, well, it's positive. 6. Write 3 different division expressions that each have a negative quotient. Use at least 2 of the rational numbers here in each expression. Write 3 different division expressions that each have a negative quotient. Use at least 2 of these rational numbers here. All right, I get it now. I could use -1/2. It needs to be a negative quotient, so now I have to deal with a positive. Division. So I'm going to divide by 4/5. Okay, that's going to be -1/2 times 5/4, which is -5/8. Okay. So there's a negative quotient using at least two of these. The other one I can do is -3 divided by 4/5. And I'm going to put -3 over 1. That's going to be -3 over 1 times the reciprocal of 4/5. And that's going to give me -15 over 4. And I don't like improper. 4 times 3 is 12 with a remainder of 3. And it's negative. So there's a negative quotient from these two numbers. And it says write 3 different division expressions that each have a negative quotient using at least 2 of these numbers. So now I'm going to do it using all 3. So I'm going to do -1/2 divided by 4/5. And then I'm going to divide that by -3. Like so. So PEMDAS or GEMDAS says to work left to right. So -1/2 divided by 4/5 is the same as -1/2 times 5/4, which equals -5/8, which I got up here already. And now I'm going to divide that by -3 over 1, and that is going to be -5 over 8 times a -1 over 3. However, this is going to be positive. So instead of using a -3 right here, I'm going to use a +3 because I'm not going to get a negative solution if I have 2 negatives. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you. Negative times a positive is negative. 5 times 1 is 5. 8 times 3 is 24. So there are 3 quotient equations that came out to be a negative solution. Okay, number 7. The quotient of A and B is positive. Which of the following could be true about A and B? Select the correct answers. So let's take a look. The product of A times B is negative. The quotient of A and B is positive. So let me first write that. If the quotient of A over B is positive, then either A is positive and so is B, or A is negative and so is B. So if the product of A times B is negative, that would mean a negative times a positive. So that can't be. The quotient of B divided by A is negative. That's just flipping these over. And if you flip over a positive and a negative over a negative, it's still going to be positive. So if that is negative, you got a positive over a negative. Whoops. You got a positive over a negative, or you have a negative or over a positive. If B divided by A is negative. Okay. So it can't be that. Both A and B are negative. That could work. That's right there. So that's a possible solution. The quotient of negative B divided by A is negative. Well, that means A is positive. And it says the quotient of A and B is positive. Well, this is going to give us... No, that's just not going to work. And both A and B are positive. So there are our 2 solutions. It's either C or E. Okay, next one. Kayleigh fills a bird feeder with seeds. As birds visit this feeder, the height of the seed changes from 13.6 to 11.1 over a period of 6¼ hours. Okay, what is the average change in height of the seeds each hour? So the first thing I want to find is how much the seeds changed. 13.6 minus 11.1, 6 minus 1 is 5, 3 minus 1 is 2. It dropped by 2.5 centimeters. Okay, so that's a negative. It did so in 6¼ hours. So I want to take how much it dropped which is negative 2.5, and divide it by 6¼ hours. I'm going to leave this a fraction because it's easier, and I'm going to make it improper. So 6 times 4 is 24, plus 1 is 25, divided by 4. So when I have a compound fraction like this, notice I have decimals and fractions, okay? Negative 2.5 is the same as negative 2½ which is the same as negative 5/2. So the first thing I'm going to do is change that. So let me erase this and make it 2 fractions. Okay? So I'm dividing a fraction by a fraction, which means you keep the first term or the numerator, you change to multiplication, and you take the reciprocal of what you're dividing by. 25/4 becomes 4/25, and we multiply. And oh, by the way, we can cancel first so the numbers don't get so large. So 5 will go into 5 once, 5 will go into 25 5 times. 2 will go into 2 once, 2 will go into 4 twice. Now I have a 1, negative 1 times 2, which is negative 2, over 1 times 5, which is 5. So it's dropping 2/5 of a centimeter per hour. Okay. And 2/5 is 0.4 centimeters per hour. Okay, now we have a negative times a positive times a positive. There's only one negative, so my answer is going to be negative. So I'm going to put a negative sign there. And I'm going to work left to right. 0.3 times 0.2. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 decimal places, so I need it 0.6. I then take that 0, and then I should always put a 0 in front of the decimal. 0.06 times 12 is 6 times 2 is 12. Bring down a 0. 1 times 6 is 6. Okay, add those, and I get 72 with 2 decimal places, and I get 0.72. So decimal point, 7, 2. That's how we bubble this. Negative 0.72. Okay, closing ticket. Write a division expression with fractions that result in negative 3/8. All right. That's pretty easy. I know it'd be very difficult for a student who's new at this, but I just want 2 fractions, okay, when we divide to get negative 3/8. So I'm just going to pick any number. Let's make it easy. I'm going to choose 1/2. And I'm going to put divided by x equals negative 3/8. Okay. So in order to get rid of this, so this can be rewritten as x over 2. Half of x is x divided by 2 equals negative 3/8. And let's see, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of that 2. Because 2 over 1 is going to cancel the 2's, and I get x. And this is going to be negative 6/8, which reduces to negative 3/4. So if I take 1/2 divided by negative 3/4, I will get negative 3/8. Okay, that might have been real tricky for some, but if you just use algebra, once you've learned it, that is, it gets a lot easier. Okay, that's the end of session 4 and lesson 12. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.